that clause 5 be amended as proposed by the Honorable Duale. The first go will be the leader of majority.
Yes. Honorable Chair, while I agree with the need for protection, I had already provided for that in the bill. The current clause 5 basically protects any person who held office as a member of the board or as an officer or member of the staff of the authority immediately before the commencement of this section shall continue to hold office as if that person had been appointed under this act. So every job is already saved. And also, we went further to provide for all the obligations of the clause 4, that subject to this act, all the rights, duties, obligations, assets, and liabilities at the commencement of this section shall be transferred to the service. So the change of name does not affect all the ongoing obligations. It does not affect the contracts. They will continue as if they were entered under this, because all we are doing is changing the name from authority to service. But all the ongoing obligations, including contracts with contractors and tenderers, continue as if they were contracted with authority being called a service. That is the essence of the transitional clause that we put. So, but what the Honorable Duale is saying is actually limiting for Commissioner General and the board or commissioners that those ones will be the only ones who continue for the unexpired. Now, this has obviously then got the issue of a contradiction for other members of staff who are on a certain contract. What happens to them, right? No, because we are talking of member of the board or commissioner general. If you specify this and you don't put the same thing for the unexpired for everyone else, then you are getting some two different things. So, Honorable Chair, I would urge that we, and you can guide us on this from your legal, that if it's already provided for, there's no additional value to be created by then further specifying these three officers. The Commissioner General, the board is already provided for. Commissioner General and commissioners are members of the staff of the authority. So they already provided for, they are already saved, and I don't see what value we'll be getting. It's just a superfluous amendment, but that could also attract some litigation, especially since this is not been subjected to any public participation. The bill has only been subjected to public participation with respect to the change of name. Now, change of officers and everything else has not been subjected to public participation. And we could well have this thing being brought in litigation starting, that we are changing the terms of Commissioner General, we are limiting it only to a term. We are now saying he's probably not eligible to start. We are then going further to even redesignate the way they will be appointed, which is not part of the original bill. And that has not been subjected to any public participation. We don't know what the public would have said about it. And hence, I would urge that we limit ourselves to the substance of the bill and not expand its scope to beyond what the bill was intended, which was to change the name from Revenue Authority to Revenue Service. Honorable Speaker, I beg to oppose this amendment.
The Honorable Martin Owino, member for the
Chair, thank you. I think the concern of Honorable Duale is taken care of, because when you go to specificity of who to remain and who to go, then you will be kind of drafting another bill. So instead of voting no, Honorable Duale, I think the majority has really explained. If you could withdraw, make it easy for us to move on. Thank you.
The Honorable Okello.
I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Basically, I do not see big variance in these two arguments between the leader of majority emeritus and the current leader of majority. But again, it cures a real malady, Honorable Speaker. Number one, we are transiting from service to, from KRA to Kenya Revenue Services. And if we do not, with certainty, decipher those two issues, then it may be assumed, firstly, that you have commissioners beginning a new term under a new service. So I think this needs to be specified categorically, that it is a continuation of what has been in place, awaiting their exit, because basically they will exit at the end of the day. But again, it helps protect the institutional memory of KRA transiting into services, Honorable Speaker. So I only wish that the two majority leaders would sit together and come up with a concurrence. If it is a matter of semantics, let us sit down and put them in good shape. Otherwise, I support both, Honorable Speaker.
Bayaya, the Honorable Bayaya.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. My question is on the process. If the Honorable Duale raised an amendment and proposed, and there has not been any secondment, would it be right for this matter to move forward? Because he asked the chair budget to second and he declined, and yet this matter is proceeding to debate.
Now, the Honorable Bayaya, when we are in committee and the amendment is captured in the order paper, there is no need for secondment. The Honorable Duale.
Mr. Chairman, the gist of the matter is that we must state it in law that the current Commissioner General and the board, by transiting from Kenya Revenue Authority to Kenya Revenue Service, they don't take it as a fresh start. That the Commissioner General and the board can say, this is a different entity. So we are starting afresh. So what I'm trying to say is that let us put it, we are lawmakers. Transitional and consequential amendments are very critical and fundamental in drafting of laws. So what I'm just saying is that there's a current Commissioner General and there's a board. So you are changing, it's like you're changing the name of the Kenya National Assembly to Kenya National Representative. So what will be the fate of the clerk as of now? So we must have a safeguard to make sure that as we change the name, the current Commissioner General and the board will not take it on the face of it, that they are starting a new organization. I mean, I came all the way from Mandera. I came all the way from Mandera because this amendment was critical, even when I was the leader of majority. Kenya Revenue Authority is critical. And by the way, if the House convenes me, I have no problem. But what I'm saying is, transitional and consequential amendments in lawmaking in this House are very fundamental. You can't just have a law hanging. So, Chair, I really want to ask the leader of majority if that safeguard has been provided in the bill, and it's not provided in the bill. It is not. Please, it's not. You know, I have read this bill. Let us not try to play balls. I'm just trying to, I don't want to become the Commissioner General. But the Commissioner General, the current Commissioner General has a term limit, which is renewable. Now, when you have a new organization, can we just say it in law that he will continue and secure his expired term if the new board and the board, but if the Kenya Revenue Service gives him a renewal, we have no problem. Mine is about transitional and consequential amendment in terms of drafting of laws for this House. And I've been around with Honorable Kimunya.
Very well. There's nothing out of order, the Honorable Doyle. You have heard your say. Let others also speak. The Honorable Kamket. The Honorable Kizito.
Chairman, thank you so much. I want to support Duale on this amendment. And I want to think that there's nothing wrong in reiteration in law as long as it's evoking clarity. Because actually, matter transition can be something else if you don't really take care of that. So for me, I would want to urge the House to accept that amendment for purposes of clarity, and even if it is a reiteration, it does not actually kill or break a bone. So actually, I support that amendment.
The Honorable Ahome, member for Kandara.
Well, yeah, thank you, Speaker. Unfortunately for Kanini Kega, he is not sitting on the Speaker's seat. Thank you, Chairman. I want to rise to support Duare. This is a legal question for the unexpired term. So I would want to support the amendment. And you see, Majority Leader is not listening. Kanini Kega is making sure that he doesn't listen. You know, Kanini Kega has secured a new name, but I don't want
the Honorable Member for Kandara, do not be unduly concerned by what the Honorable
Let me not
Kanini.
be distracted because, yes,
because what
you.
is important is what the other members are listening
guided.
to. Yes.
Well guided. He's my friend. I was saying that the Majority Leader, Amos Kemunya, should agree that we need to secure even the unexpired period of the current commissioner and the board. If we do not, it will be assumed the new service, unless there is clarity in law, we will have to recruit afresh. And I think it is not necessarily right for people to exit midway, and if it's an year or two remaining, for purposes of institutional memory and securing better transition and good governance, I think we should secure the transition period, but it cannot be assumed that they will start afresh. And therefore, I stand to support the Honorable Duare. Yeah, thank you.
Honorable members, I think we have all spoken to this. The Honorable Alice will tell you, just relax. The chair is speaking. You cannot force the chair by carrying up your hands. Just relax. I'll give you an opportunity. But the Honorable Alice, you will remember that in law, in the practice of law, there is the doctrine of being abundantly cautious. That is what you are speaking to. And I believe that is what the Honorable Duale is speaking to. And you will recall that I think it is in Burundi where they had a constitution that was not clear about the terms of even a president, and the president insisted that he's starting a new term. So there is no harm in being abundantly cautious, to provide that they will serve for clearly, as the Honorable Duale has done. But that again is for the House to decide. I will allow 2 or 3 more people to speak to this so that we put the question. And the first one will be the Honorable Ogutu Abel, member for Bomachoge Borabu.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I want to agree with you that the sentiments that have been shared are for the welfare of the new entity that has been renamed, the entity that has been renamed. But, Honorable Chair, I think the question we want to ask in this House is whether we want to add to the wordings of the document, because already Honorable Kimunya has alluded to a section which actually takes care of the service, the serving period of the existing commissioners plus the staff of KRA. Honorable Chair, we have done similar amendments before, and we have always provided that caption that the current membership in the committees and the commissioners will always remain in office until such a time that their term expired, from which time then a new board takes up. So for me, it's a question of asking whether we need to add to the volume of the document, because already that is taken care of, or do we want to go with the clause that has already been given by Honorable Kimunya. Thank you, Chair.
The Honorable Makali Mulu.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Mr. Chairman, the Professor has just taken the word from my mouth, because that's what I wanted to say. We have the bill with us. Why can't we just read that clause 5 and see whether it provides for what Duale wants provided for? If there is a gap, then we take up that gap and include what Duale has said. Because I think Kimunya is quoting some clause in the bill that must be written already. So if we just read through that, we see that it takes care of Honorable Duale. If not, then we include whatever Duale is saying. But it is important we accommodate both in terms. We don't want a situation where somebody loses a job as a result of enacting a new law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Brilliant. Honorable members, now what we are looking at is this. Just hold on. In the bill, what is in the bill at clause 5.5? This is what it says. Any person who held office as a member of the board or as an officer or a member of staff of the authority immediately before the commencement of this section shall continue to hold office as if that person had been appointed under this act. That is what is in the bill. Now, what the honorable member for Garissa is proposing to do to reinforce it is this. He is proposing to add a new clause, subclause 5A, which will read as this. A person who immediately before the commencement of this act held the office of Commissioner General, member of the board, or commissioner shall continue to hold office only for the unexpired period of their term. These are the two competing clauses that we are looking at. Now, the Honorable Shinali, you are the one who has not spoken.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have listened, and Chair, you have put even more clarity. I think the bill covers what we are looking for. The only difference here is, according to Honorable Duale's amendment, once you've served, when your term expires, even if you are due for renewal, you cannot be renewed. Mr. Speaker, this amendment must fall, because if you are serving and you are eligible to renew another term, Mr. Speaker, you must be granted that opportunity, because the Constitution also allows you to serve. But if you put this amendment, then if you are there as a Commissioner General, once the first term expires, you cannot get a second term, Mr. Speaker. That is to my understanding, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kanini Kega.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Vice Chair has clearly articulated the issues that I also wanted to comment on. When you say shall and only, Mr. Speaker, it's limiting. It means that these commissioners and also the Commissioner General can only will only be eligible to serve for the term that they have. If they want to seek for renewal, it is not provided for. So, Honorable Chair, I beg to oppose.
Now, because all this are arising out of the proposals by the Honorable Duale, I will allow him to have the final say on this.
Chair,
yes, of course. The leader will allow you. Of course,
Chair,
it is your bill.
Chair, of course, ultimately, because this is the last day of the term of Parliament, and I want to close my parliamentary business with this amendment. So it will go to vote. But, Chair, those who are saying only and shall, I want to ask them a question, a very moral, fundamental question. I am securing the current contract of the Commissioner General and the board. Am I right? In my amendment. Why are you talking about anticipation? When this one expires, he is subjected to performance contracting by the new board, by government. You know, Honorable Kimunya, I have been a leader of majority, and I have been the first leader of majority. And I served for 7.5 years. When a member is talking, I don't talk. I'm just saying, I can never remove the on, but I can see a feeling. And by the way, the current Commissioner General of KRA is a very good friend of mine. He appeared a number of times before the Public Accounts Committee with Honorable Eseli. Very competent officer. And we make laws for posterity. We don't make laws for individuals. I'm securing from the change of authority to service his term. How the second term will be dealt with is subject to the board that will be in place. So I don't know why you're caring more about only shall me. You're anticipating what will happen when he's subjected. So, Mr. Chair, I think what we do, because I have spoken in this house for 17,000 times, for it to, 17,000, I've gone to the Hansard, and I want to finish it to 17,020, because this afternoon I have other issues. So can you put it to question? And I have had about 2,200 amendments.
It's well.
So put the question. Let it be part of it.
There is no doubt that you are leading in that aspect of the number of times spoken on record. The Honorable Kimunya, finally, before we put this question.
Chair, the issue goes beyond what's on paper. When you see a toad in the day, something is chasing it. The current Commissioner General of KRA, and indeed the commissioners, have been under constant attack by a certain group of politicians because of the stance they have taken in collection of revenue.
Just hold on, the Honorable Leader. The Honorable Withdrawal, what is out of order?
No, point of order. Chair. Point of order. You need to, point of order. We're not discussing politics. I have an amendment. I have justified. Chair, if you allow him to go that route, then you'll be very unfair to me.
The Honorable Withdrawal, you've made your point. Let me just guide the leader.
Let me just guide the leader.
Leader of majority, kindly. This is the letter of the law. Let us leave politics out of it. Let's just make good law. We are not making law for specific individuals, but we are making law for the country. Yes. So just let's deal with the dry bones of the law as it is before us.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair, the import of this amendment is to specifically limit the service of commissioners, the current Commissioner General, and members of the board to only the unexpired term, and thereafter they will not be eligible. So, because this is such a fundamental alteration of the original bill, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair, I want to save this House the time to debate this and the subsequent amendment following this by withdrawing the bill. No, I can. I'm the mover. Yeah.
Honorable members, I propose the question that this House do agree with the report of the Committee of the whole House on its consideration of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 33 of 2022. Honorable members, I also direct that this business will be concluded when the matter will be set down on the order paper, probably in the afternoon today. The next one is the County Allocation of Revenue Amendment Bill, Senate Bill Number 1 of 2022. Mover, please.
The Chair.
Chair.
Yeah. Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the whole House has considered the County Allocation of Revenue Amendment Bill, Senate Bill Number 1 of 2022, and approved the same without amendments.
The mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I also request Honorable Shinari to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the whole House.
The Honorable Shinari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I rise to second the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Mr. Speaker, allow me to say one or two things, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of pending bills, I think, Mr. Speaker, this House and the Senate need to make a deliberate move to make sure that money is going to the counties, as the law says, Mr. Speaker. Pending bills take first charge, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there are issues of ECD teachers, Mr. Speaker. ECD teachers, we have variation in terms of from one county to the other in terms of salary payment, Mr. Speaker. This is an issue which we need to look at, Mr. Speaker. And as Baba gave his manifesto, he said he'll employ all teachers. I hope these are all teachers will be employed, including ECT teachers, Mr. Speaker, and the salary is also paid across, Mr. Speaker, without any differences from county to county. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Honorable members, allow me to propose a question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report, and I also direct that the next necessary steps will be undertaken when this business will be set down on the other paper next. We shall make progress. Oh, yes, there's the third one, yes, the one that was withdrawn. Yes, proceed, Chair.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the Committee of the whole House has considered the Kenya Revenue Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 24 of 2022, and that pursuant to Standing Order 140, the bill has been withdrawn.
The mover.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report, and I also request the Honorable Ehenya to second the motion for agreement with the report of the Committee of the whole House.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Honorable members, I propose the question that this House do agree with the committee in the said report, and also direct that the final rights in that regard will be undertaken when that matter will be set down on the order paper next. Next order.
Order number 14, motion, consideration of report on annulment of the scrap metal dealers rules 2022.
This is from the Chairperson Committee on Delegated Legislation, the Honorable Kamket. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Scrap Metal Dealers Rules 2022 laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, June 8, 2022, and pursuant to provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 annuls the scrap metal dealers rules 2022, published as legal notice number 84 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development published the scrap metal rules on the 5th of May 2022. The rules were submitted to the Clerk of the National Assembly on 26th of May and tabled on 31st of May. The rules, Mr. Speaker, seek to regulate dealings in scrap metal and provide for licensing of scrap metal dealers as a condition for lifting a moratorium on dealings in scrap metals issued on 20th January 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee examined the scrap metal rules 2022 against the Constitution, the Interpretation and General Provisions Act, Scrap Metal Act 2015, as well as the Statutory Instruments Act. The scrutiny, Mr. Speaker, was undertaken following publication of the rules. Having examined the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the other laws, the committee made the following observations. Number one, Mr. Speaker, the rules were tabled in Parliament outside the statutory timelines contemplated under Section 11(1) of the Statutory Instruments Act. Furthermore, the rules were published in the Gazette on 5th of May, laid on the table of the House 31st of May, being the 9th sitting day since publications, hence out of the statutory timeline contemplated under Section 11(1) of the Statutory Instruments Act. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, Part 2 of the rules contain provisions on the Council, including nomination and qualification of appointment as the chairperson and council members, which is ultra vires, Mr. Speaker, Part 2 of the Scrap Metals Act, which properly deals with the matters relating to the council, and therefore this is contrary also to Section 13A of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. The explanatory memorandum, Mr. Speaker, sir, submitted indicates that the ministry subjected the rules to public participation and sought for comments from various stakeholders. But the memorandum fails to give evidence, Mr. Speaker, sir. There was no evidence of the consultation. And we know, Mr. Speaker, how important public participation is in matters such as this. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, on the matter of the regulatory impact statement, the regulatory making authority, Mr. Speaker, sir, further failed to submit to the committee the regulatory impact statement as required under Section 6 of the Statutory Instruments Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, having examined, therefore, these rules against the Constitution, the Interpretation and General Provisions Act, Cap 2, the Scrap Metals Act 2015, the Statutory Instruments Act number 23 of 2013, the committee recommends that this House annuls in entirety the scrap metal rules for non-conformity with the Constitution, the Scrap Metals Act, and the Statutory Instruments Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those few remarks, therefore, I beg to move and ask my friend, Honorable Owen Bayer, to second. Yeah.
The Honorable Owen Bayer.
I wish the people would.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much and for giving me the opportunity to second the Honorable Kamkate on the regulations. I support his position and his committee position that they be annulled on the basis that the statutory timelines were not met. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament gives the executive and members of the executive ample time to present any regulations in time so that they can be looked at in this House before they take effect. But when executive fails to do that, I think it is important that Parliament puts its foot down and does the right thing by ensuring that statutory timelines are followed to the latter. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, a very fundamental item here that is constitutional, Article 10 and 118 of the Constitution about public participation was not undertaken. There is no evidence that there was public participation in these regulations on scrap metal. And therefore, in the light of that, in the absence of proper public participation by dealers and other stakeholders, therefore it is right that this Parliament says the law must be followed by the executive, and whoever has the law and role to make regulation in this country follows that. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we need to know what is the impact, what are the socio-economic impact of the regulations as they pass. The scrap metal dealer, the scrap metal in this country contributes significantly to the economic activities of this country. And when we want to control it, we must control it when we know we have a good assessment of the social and economic impact of the same. That has not been provided. We would like to have a scrap metal a portfolio that works for the country, but also under certain regulations that we are aware these regulations are going to spur economic growth in this country. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to second the Honorable Kamkate and second the annulment of these regulations by this House. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. In its entirety, I thank you.
Well, honorable members, allow me then to propose that this House adopt the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Scrap Metal Dealers Rules 2022, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, June the 8th, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 18 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, annuls the Scrap Metal Dealers Rules 2022, published as legal notice number 84 of 2022. The Honorable Martin Owino is the first one on my list.
Mr. Speaker, I want to support, especially when rules being made does not follow the rules laid down. I think that is an offense. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I think the scrap metal issue needs to be revisited, especially when it comes to vandalism and illegal trade. So we urge the executive, or even us, when we get back here, to look into this and strengthen the law regarding the trade. But I commend the committee, and I commend the chair and the entire members in the annulment of this, and I support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think the first thing I should do is commend the Committee on Delegated Legislation and even single out the chairman for the job that he has done very committedly in securing this subsector we are calling the scrap metal subsector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if your memory serves you right, you would remember that I presented to this House a petition where I was seeking for the lifting of what I considered to be an unconstitutional and illegal moratorium, which in itself is just semantics. It's not a moratorium. It is actually a blanket ban on the trade of scrap metal in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, some of us who are standing here are not supporting any illegality or illegal sabotage of installations or infrastructure. What we are saying is that you will not ban the trade of meat in butcheries just because there is cattle rustling in Baringo. It would not be making sense. It's not logical, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, yes, there could be some fraudulent scrap metal business going on, but they are legit dealers in scrap metal in this country, Mr. Speaker. Some of them doing extremely specialized business. For example, Mr. Speaker, the metals that come out of technological gadgets, whether they are phones, whether they are TVs, whether they are radios, whether they are computers, whether they are microwaves, These metals carry hazardous materials that cannot afford to be left out in the environment for them to sink very hard metals like lead into our soil and into our rivers. But Mr. Speaker, since the banning of scrap metal trade in this country, the accumulation of electronic waste, especially in this city, is alarming, Mr. Speaker. We are all sitting ducks, waiting to die out of cancer caused out of moratoriums that are not very well thought through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, why I support the annulment in entirety is because even with the opportunity to go and prepare regulations, the ministry has come back to this house and tabled timelines, first of all, out of the statutory timelines, Mr. Speaker. They missed the deadline. Secondly, if you go into the regulations that they are giving, and specifically in Part 2, Mr. Speaker, you will find that the regulations that are being stipulated there are actually contrary to the Statutory Instruments Acts, Mr. Speaker. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of public participation. Kenyans are stakeholders in this trade. Mr. Speaker, where is the evidence of robust public participation happening on these regulations, Mr. Speaker? So, Mr. Speaker, I do support the Committee on Delegated Legislation. I do encourage the chairman to now, talk with his ministry so that we can have an unconditional lifting of the scrap metal ban, which I believe is illegal and unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, on the basis of it being unconstitutional, on the basis of it going against the Scrap Metals Act, and on the basis of it contravening the Statutory Instruments Act, I do support the annulment of these regulations in their entirety. And I would like to finally say, Mr. Speaker, this was unnecessary. We have a law that was put in place in 2015 that regulates this subsector called the scrap metal industry. And if we only implemented the law to the letter, we would not be needing to be having all these other physical education games that are being played around the scrap metal trade, with even illegal moratoriums and bans that are actually strangling an industry. But, Mr. Speaker, this is not unique. The same thing is happening to the timber trade, Mr. Speaker. The same thing is happening to the loggers. Cities are closing down, towns are closing down. When we impose mandatory bans, blanket bans on the industries without considering that there are hustlers who make a living out of these industries. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I'd like to support with all the strength I have the annulment of these regulations in their entirety. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
The Honorable Kiare, this expression, this physical education games, is that proper English, or this is a direct translation of this new language that is emerging in this country? That is part of it. I believe so. The Honorable Nasir, member from Vita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to, first of all, congratulate the Committee on Delegated Legislation. They did the right and honorable thing. And by refusing this particular regulations, first of all, they were brought here time-barred. This House is setting a record that you'll not just come here and use Parliament as a rubber stamp. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, I want this to go out to other, 1, state corporation, 2, ministries, that if they break the law, and in other instances, Mr. Speaker, in other instances, there have been instances where they pass regulations, those regulations do not necessarily come to Parliament, and they're gazetted, and they have a financial impact on them. That means fees, levies that they are charging. We need to have proper systems in place. And this is what it is that we intend to achieve in this country. But more so, I wish to speak, first of all, on behalf of the people of Mombasa. We have quite a number of Jua Kali sheds, Mr. Speaker. And I recall where I come from, in Mvita constituency, we have a very, very beautiful Juakali shed that we built on behalf of the Juakali sector who are there. The Juakali sector contributes a significant amount. As a matter of fact, the white-collar jobs, the people who have been employed to go to the office from 8 to 5 or to go to work during certain shifts, are a very, very small percentage compared to those who are fending themselves on a day-to-day. Now, with just someone's stroke of the pen, you're asking thousands of lives. Now, it is important. Yes, we do have people who are bad and they are spoiling the whole industry. Yes, we do have people who went and vandalized transformers. Yes, we have people who are vandalizing manhole covers from where I come from in Mombasa. But then let's put punitive clauses in such a way that if you're caught with those manhole covers or the transformers or anything else, then there is a proper punitive clause. But then to go and say that we're closing a whole industry, and even without following the right participation, is wrong, Mr. Speaker. It is totally wrong. So you can imagine the reason why the Constitution of Kenya, the way the wording was set up and how we have been enacted, the kind of democracy that we have, is that sovereign power belongs to the people. Now, that power has only been delegated to us, all of us here. And that is the reason why such kind of legislation, when it comes in through gazette notices, have to pass through this House so that the voice of the people can be able to be heard and be debated as well. So I want to congratulate. And I just want to give this as a warning, Mr. Speaker, because some of these heads think that they can be able to do anything that they want. I want to give a warning because it is going to be a huge audit matter, and it will be on your neck if you decide to pass things unconstitutionally without them passing through this very House. And this House today, on its last day, is putting its foot down that they are going to be more firm than just being able to be told to rubber stamp. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well spoken, the Honorable Nasir. Indeed, the power belongs to the people. And even this House is subject to those very people, the Kenyans. And that is why you have correctly pointed out that even this House will, at some point today, adjourn sine die, so that it will submit the membership of this House to the will of the people again. That is correct. The Honorable Owen Bayaya, member for Kilifi. What is out of order?
Thank you very much. Raising on Standing Order 95, Mr. Speaker, I think we've had enough discussion on this matter.
The Honorable Bayaya. The Honorable Bayaya. The Honorable Bayaya, you are out of order.
I want to make I've called at Standing Order 95, Mr. Speaker.
No, you're out of order.
Looking at the quorum.
No, return to your seat. Return to your seat. Return to your seat. Yes, the Honorable Baya, you know very well that that particular line, it became unavailable to you when you contributed, and now you do not want to, the Honorable Nzengu, to also contribute, and whom I'm giving this opportunity to contribute. The Honorable Nzengu, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report by the delegated Committee on Delegated Legislation for annulment of those rules for scrap metal. And Mr. Speaker, I want to support the members who have contributed to this report based on the fact that the ban on scrap metal was ill-informed, and it has caused untold suffering for many people, ranging from industries to individuals who collect scrap metals at my village. And now that has been their source of livelihood, and today they are not able to even put food on the table. It has also affected the industries that depend on scrap metal for manufacturers of various steel products, and that has resulted to losses of jobs. Mr. Speaker, I think that decision was hasty. It was reached on no consultation, and it was reactionary. The fact that some people who have been involved in smuggling scrap metal from important installations of the government does not make it that every Kenyan who depend on scrap metal must suffer. I think I agree with the member who said that proper legislation should be in place so that people who are caught with having vandalized public infrastructures are properly punished, but not punishing the entire country. So I support the report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, honorable members, allow me to recognize in the Speaker's gallery the presence of our daughters from Chania Girls High School, Thika West Constituency, Kiambu County. They are welcome to observe the proceedings of the House, and we wish them God's blessings in their studies. We will now have a contribution from the Honorable Duale, member for Garissa Township.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the chair of delegated legislation on not only on this matter, but on a number of regulations that I think he has served it diligently in terms of procedure. And Mr. Speaker, the essence of the formation of delegated legislation in dealing with matters of statutory instruments, regulations that are brought to this House is basically legal. Do they comply with the law? So the committee will look at regulations, not on the basis of anything else. They will look at the regulations whether they comply with the Statutory Instrument Act number 23 of 2013. And on the face of it, they have annulled this instrument because this instrument, if you look at section 11, subsection 1 of the Statutory Instrument Act number 23 of 2013, which I had an opportunity in the legislation of that act, the rules of this scrap metal, what is called the Scrap Metal Dealers Rules 2022, legal notice number 84 of 2022, was published in the Gazette Notice number 84 of 2022 on the 5th of May 2022 and were laid on the table of the House on 31st of May 2022. Now, that being the 9th sitting day since they were published, that itself gives this House and the committee that that Gazette notice did not comply with the statutory timelines provided or contemplated under section 11, subsection 1 of the instrument of the Statutory Instrument Act of 2013. On the basis of that, the committee, in fact, did not even deliberate it. Because if you are told to bring tea, or the Speaker is supposed, for example, let me use, if the Speaker is supposed to start the proceedings of the House at 2:30, in accordance with our standing orders, the Speaker of the National Assembly cannot begin the proceedings at 3:30. It's as simple as that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, section 11, subsection 4 of the Act stipulates, and I want to read for those who are watching us and who are in his house. If a copy of a statutory instrument that is required to be laid before the relevant House of Parliament is not so laid in accordance with this section, the statutory instrument shall cease to have effect immediately after the last day for it to be laid, but without any prejudice. Mr. Speaker, during my tenure as the leader of majority, and I really want my brother Amos Kimunya to rein in on government. During my tenure, I was not even allowing them to table. Once the legal team of the National Assembly tell me these people have violated the timelines, I will not table it. So even the tabling of it was wrong. Because why do you table when they have not conformed to the timelines? Mr. Speaker, and I really want this House, today is the last day. Mr. Speaker, this House, under my leadership, as a leader of majority, that my signature, passed the Scrap Metal Act, gives the minister powers, talks about exports, and then somebody somewhere goes on the streets and says that is null and void. In fact, there is a law existing. Mr. Speaker, don't kill small people, the hustlers who are making their lives easy, paying school fees. You saw the other day when somebody wants to scrap and stop the burning of Mitumba. Scrap metal is being fought because there are big people in government and private sector who want to establish steel manufacturing factories. You want to have few and create millions in poverty, Mr. Speaker. You're fighting Mitumba. You're fighting scrap metal. You are denying the people.
The Honorable Kelo Odoyo, member for Nyando.
I thank you. Honorable Duale, he is a bit jittery. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to also thank the Committee on Delegated Legislation, headed by the serious Kamket, Honorable Kamket. Honorable Speaker, scrap metal industry is an industry that has thrived for a long period of time. It has created employment opportunities to hundreds of thousands of our people. And what we can do, instead of killing this industry, which has been done by the current government, is to ensure that we put enough measures to enable this business to thrive. And when it thrives, our people thrive. And Honorable Speaker, the unilateral decision that was employed by the government to apply brakes on this business was insensitive, was uncalled for, unwarranted, and should not be allowed to see light of the day. And that is why this piece of document that has been presented by the committee is timely. Otherwise, you never know how governments operate. You may have another government that will be as insensitive as to the one that closed the business of those dealing with scrap metal, Honorable Speaker. Whereas we acknowledge that these opportunities exist, we must also take cognizance of the fact that we must be responsible. And that feeds into the responsibility that must be bestowed on those who carry out this business, Honorable Speaker. I reckon that we have professional bodies that have managed to self-regulate, and by self-regulating, it gives the government no reason to put its ugly head on the affairs of any profession, Honorable Speaker. So this therefore means that those who do this business must rise above board, must protect the interest of the business, must ensure that the clandestine damages of installations in the name of perpetuating a business must stop. The government did not just wake up and applied brakes on the business. It was informed by activities that were irregular, that were illegal, and were unacceptable. That is why the government did what they did. And therefore, when we ask them to self-regulate, that means the road signages, which are constantly destroyed by the business community under this subset, Honorable Speaker, must stop. We need those signages. We need metals that prevent accidents on the roads, especially along the Rift Valley. Those metals have been juicy to the scrap metal dealers, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, they have to also go an extra mile to protect this business by not engaging in things that may make the government stop this kind of business, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I support the report by the delegated legislation, Honorable Speaker, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable members, before I give the next member, it's just important to remind you that in contributing to this, you must be minded that you have 5 minutes, because it's a discussion of a committee report, and in that you had set the time limit to 5 minutes. So the next member is the Honorable Kilonzo, member for Yatta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I support this report by the Committee on Delegated Legislation, Mr. Speaker, I want to share my experience, because scrap industry, Mr. Speaker, scrap metal dealers industry, Mr. Speaker, is a very crucial sector in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, my personal experience within my constituency and even within the county, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the hated sector within the county. Why, Mr. Speaker? It ceased being scrap metal trade. It moved to metal trade. And scrapless people, Mr. Speaker, will go and remove windows from schools, gates from churches, fences. Even in my own farm, they uprooted greenhouses, Mr. Speaker, at night. So the bitterness within the residents of Yatta and generally within Machakos County, Mr. Speaker, was unbearable. They would go and move road furniture, signs, new signs, road railings. It ceased being a scrap metal trade. So, Mr. Speaker, for government to have suspended the trade to put the house in order is something which is understandable. So, as we revisit, Mr. Speaker, this trade, it is very important to regulate how it is done. And the rules, Mr. Speaker, must be very specific. And the penalties must be so high to make sure that people who are buying what is supposed to be scrap metal know what is scrap metal. Mr. Speaker, why it is important to have this trade on scrap metal? It is basically recycling metal. It is good for the environment. It's the same way we are saying we recycle plastic and waste. It is good, but it should not be done at the expense of the economy of this country, at the expense of the public sector, Mr. Speaker. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, they are even stealing spoons and sufurias. And these were going to a trade and a shop in one of my centers called Sophia and another number 2. Imagine, and they would buy sufurias, spoons, anything metal, fork, knives, anything, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very important that, Mr. Speaker, we regulate the trade. It should be purely scrap. What we have today, Mr. Speaker, is not scrap. It is metal trade. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this committee, I want to encourage next Parliament to ensure when the new rules come, Mr. Speaker, they promote trade of scrap, not metal. Scrap metal, but not metal only. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the resolution of the committee and recommendations.
Honorable Kilonzo, well spoken. I recall my own mother, when she was still alive, God rest her soul, telling me that she did not have any spoons in the house anymore, because when she puts them out there, the boys would put them in their pockets. And I visited one of my grandmothers, and she told me she was making some githeri on her jiko outside, and when she went back into the house, when she came out, the sufuria was gone and the githeri had been thrown onto the... So the scrapping of the entire business, it needs to be, there must be a balance. And And this speaks to a lot of things in our country. The poverty levels of our people, the utter distress that our young people find themselves in. But also we must build our country, and we are not going to build our country by destroying the little infrastructure that we have out there. So it is a conundrum. I don't know what the solution might be, but I think this is a starting point for us to have this kind of debate here. The Honorable Wanyonyi Kevin, member for Kwanza.
You protect me from my neighbor here. He's bringing something else to Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to agree with the committee on whatever they've come up with. Mr. Speaker, I think what we are lacking here is stiff regulation to regulate this particular industry. As you know, this is an industry that actually employ a lot of the youth. We have people who have degrees in engineering, what have you, and there's no other startup kids. They have that problem. We have that problem in this country. We have a problem of unemployment which is coming up every year, every time. Students live like the ones sitting here, they are living. They'll be living maybe. I don't want to discourage them. But you find that there is no work, there's no opportunity. So I think other than scrapping this matter, which actually gives an opportunity to so many Kenyans to do little business here and there, Juakali businesses in this country, I think the ministry should have come up with regulation and the penalties, severe penalties for those who are actually found dealing with the scrap metals. Because I know there's a lot of work out there. The youth who do not have anything to do, they are actually the ones destroying even electricity meters, what have you. And you've just mentioned one thing about your grandmother having left chick out there to boil kidheri, and but the one she went is been taken away by these unscrupulous boys and girls. I want us to look at it logically and say, I think the report that we have received from the Committee on Legislation is quite correct, and I'm supporting them. But the ministry should then sit down and come up with regulations and the penalties for those who are actually doing the destruction of the installations in this country, so that they can be able to earn their living. But scrapping it completely, you're not helping, you're actually multiplying problems in this country. And they have a lot of unemployment in this country, and you can't blame a guy who can't even put anything on his mouth because he has nothing to do other than getting himself involved in the scrap metal. So much as I support, I think the ministry or whoever is concerned, let him come up with regulations and the penalties for those who are dealing with the vandalization of installations. I support the report.
The Honorable Manzo, member for Makueni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the Committee of Delegated Legislation. Mr. Speaker, having been in this House for 10 years, I'm aware that we passed a scrap metal law, and it's applicable in the country. Therefore, when you have a law, obviously regulations must follow. But Mr. Speaker, we are alive to the fact that recently there was a presidential order dealing with this particular scrap metal menace, which has stopped from being scrap metal to dealing with the metal. And Mr. Speaker, I have an experience in one of the rivers in a place called Zio in Makueni constituency, whereby Kera did a bridge and had some sideways, you know, two parts on one side of the right and left. And they put metal bars there to make sure that nobody can drop into the river. And then within 2 days after Kera did this, somebody came at night, cut all that metal on both sides of the road and went to sell it. And therefore, school children now, Mr. Speaker, are at risk. This has been multiplied in quite a number of occasions. It's now, you know, dealing with metal, scrap metal, has become a multi-billion criminal enterprise. And a lot of people are making a kill out of it. They are making collusions with the people who smelt metal. They make bribes, and their lorries are packed with this stolen government property. And then they are able to have it smelted, through corruption channels. So this regulation would have been very important. But also the government should know when it is making regulations that there are timelines, there is the Statutory Instruments Act, there is the parent law, and there is a Constitution of Kenya. The moment that is not followed and proper public participation, Mr. Speaker, then obviously the government should know that is doomed to fail, even when it means well for the nation. We want to be a house which makes law which conforms to the Constitution and the law which exists. So, Mr. Speaker, there is a need to regulate this particular industry. The presidential order has already been upheld by the courts, and the courts have said that a presidential order ceases to exist when a law is now made dealing with that, and the president assigns that bill into law. Therefore, I believe the presidential order to keep status quo suffices, and it is still serving Kenyans in this particular matter. But on the side of the people, Mr. Speaker, there needs to be a protection of the well-meaning Kenyans who truly make a living out of scrap metal, and the well-meaning Kenyans who are collecting all this metal which is rusting all over the country and selling it and making it useful to the country. We must have a system of making sure those who are not dealing with scrap metal but dealing with metal are properly dealt with, Mr. Speaker. And the law deals with them, and this can be done through serious penalties, Mr. Speaker. The only penalties available now, Mr. Speaker, if somebody is caught transporting illegal metal or metal which is not scrap metal, heavy bribes to the police. And therefore, we really need a law, and the next house must come, to honor that for the benefit of the country, so that we can have regulations, law, which makes sure that scrap metal, Mr. Speaker, is practiced properly in the country. Otherwise, there are very many people who have now lost business. Recently, they demonstrated in the city and even went to the Ministry of Industrialization demonstrating. That means there has not been proper public participation. It should happen. And again, these people should set themselves into groups or circles or cooperatives so that they are able to regulate themselves the way the border sector is regulating itself. And when a criminal tries to get into the border sector now, they themselves as an organization are able to stop it and stop any crime being committed through that. So I propose that the scrap metal dealers form cooperatives. And I believe if they do that, they will be able to regulate themselves even before the government regulates them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Mizigi Munene, member for Taita Taveta.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for also giving me the opportunity to also contribute. And Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to start by, I want to support and I also commend the committee for this very job well done. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that when the ban of scrap metal was imposed, it left so many families with no food on the table. And saying that, I want to also say that this business at some point also it was announced, it became a nuisance to the community because it turned from scrap metal to metal business. Personally, I have an experience because there was a time my Jiko was stolen and, I was preparing to, I had visitors and I was lighting my Jiko, it was outside, and when I went for it, it was not there. I wanted to prepare food and I got really annoyed. But all in all, we cannot say that we are going to scrap it because so many people depend on it. So many hustlers who are making a living out of this business. And therefore, what it needs is to be regulated. It needs proper regulation. And therefore, I support this. And I also want to say that public participation has to be done, good public participation, for this, for the law to be put in place and for this business to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Honorable Ogutuwabel, member for Bomachoge Borab.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank the committee for the report that has generated a lot of discussion. And Honorable Speaker, stand to support the same report, but make comments on a number of issues. Honorable Speaker, when we look at the scrap metal industry, we are looking at a huge population of Kenya that is involved in earning their living from this industry. But as members have clearly put it, Mr. Speaker, is that the same industry is also wrecking the lives and livelihoods of other people in the society. We have heard of cases of metals being stolen, of scrap metals being stolen as well. But I think, Mr. Speaker, I think this is one area that we need to address, because in most cases, the people who have lived in this industry and worked in this industry tend to assume that they are being blamed for involving themselves with scrap metals. The idea is that we would like them to be accountable for the kind of activities that they are doing. And I think the proposal that we have more public awareness other than public participation, I think I want to say we need more public awareness on those who are living from this industry to understand that, you know, they have the tail end of a metal, to use the metal only when it's scrap, but not to be involved in metals that have also not been used. So, Honorable Speaker, I stand to support this particular report because the people in the industry include the youth, many of them who are unemployed. Yes, we know that the scrap industry also is recycled and brought back to generate new metals and the other products that are useful in society. But the idea that the business is being conducted under an environment that is depriving other people's livelihoods, I think that, Honorable Speaker, we need to condemn. I support this report. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Mawathe Musili, member for Embakasi South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. So, as I stand to support this bill on this motion on the scrap metal, there is need for, as my colleagues have indicated, for regulations of the scrap metal industry. There is no way. I'll give you an example of the exit road, old airport, North Road. All the guardrails of the old airport, North Roads, were removed approximately 2 weeks after they were put by a scrap metal dealer. A lot of street lights are disappearing thanks to the one or two of the scrap metal dealers. Most of the scrap metal dealers are good people. They do their job honestly, but there are some who have sticky fingers. So for the majority who are good scrap metal dealers, I stand to support. I'll give you an example. At Mukuru kwa Ruben, you will find Mama Wabina, who's a scrap metal dealer, or their chairman, Mr. Mutunga, who is a scrap metal dealer. And they do their job honestly, but there are a few bad apples who messes up their reputations. I'll give you the young boys at Mukuru kwa Njenga, that Kajoni and his group. They look for scrap metal using the metal detector. Metal detector and the magnets, and they're able to pick the metals and go and sell and make their decent, honest living. So, and for that, I stand to support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kamala.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And I just want to laud the committee for the good work and the report, and having come up with what we have today and the discussion we are having today, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I've been a victim in my constituency in Lurambi, whereby we build roads and especially bridges. And on those bridges, we have to support work. People have to work. We have to be a working nation. And definitely, people that deal with scrap metal are doing a good job, and they are contributing to our economy in our country, and we have to support. But, Honorable Speaker, we cannot be a country, or you cannot do business without regulations. Regulations just don't come with bottlenecks or to stifle our freedom of doing business, but there must be a discipline in every business, Honorable Speaker. And so sometimes when you go into markets, Honorable Speaker, you find people are selling plumbing materials, and some of them are old, so you wonder, did they come from somebody's house, or how did they find their way into the market, Honorable Speaker? So the work that has been done by this committee to make sure that we have this business in place, but we have to have there must be a difference between people that are just dealing with genuine scrap metal and those who are vandalizing equipment, those who are vandalizing what I would say important installations at the detrimental of Kenyans. So because of the committee report and what we are discussing here today, Honorable Speaker, I throw in my weight and I support that indeed scrap metal dealers have to do their work, they have to do their business, but there must be a way they do it so that it is genuine, so that it is not a business where they vandalize material from elsewhere to come and sell, Honorable Speaker. Because you can imagine, Honorable Speaker, where you build a bridge, and this bridge is going to support a community. But when you wake up in the morning and visit the same bridge, all the guardrails are gone. It's gone because one person thinks that they should make a business out of that at the expense of the entire community. So, Honorable Speaker, I support, and Honorable Speaker, as I take my seat, I want to thank the people of Lurambi for bringing me into this house for 5 years, and I pray for every member in this house that they get an opportunity to come back. But that one, I leave it to God and the electorate. And I also pray that God give you life in Luanda so that you can continue to serve the people of Kenya in this house. God bless you all.
Bishop Kamala, you have touched my heart. Thank you. Thank you for that prayer, wonderful prayer. I wish you well also in Lurambi, Kakamega. I have confidence, and with the Lord's guidance, it will be well. The Honorable Mwali Ombithi, member for Masinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to be able to contribute to this report of Committee of Delegated Legislation on the report of the consideration of the scrap metal dealers' rules. While it is a good business to be able to earn a living, especially in these times that there is no employment and the government is not even employing, this business is very lucrative, and the people earn a lot of money out of it. But now it looks as if it has gone out of hands. In fact, in one of the committees that I am a member, Committee of Implementation, the case of the scrap metal was brought to our committee, and we dealt with it, and we concluded, and they were able to be licensed. But now, after they were licensed,
just hold on, the member for Masinga, just hold on. There seems to be a point of order by the Honorable Mwambire, member for Ganze. What is out of order, the Honorable Mwambire?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, considering the mood of the House,
and the deliberations going on, it appears that members are in concurrence of the report. So I stand under Order 95 to call the mover to respond so that we can move to another.
Is it the mood of the House? Is it the mood? Will those who are of the opinion that we should call the mover to reply say aye? Those with the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. The Honorable Mwalio, you will finish your contribution, and then the mover will reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to finish. What is lacking in this industry is the committee that is in charge with the monitoring and also trying to enforce the rules that are supposed to be followed by the industry are not able to do it because it has become a rogue industry whereby even sufrias, we have had our honorable members that even the sufrias are being taken when the food is boiling, and this is a very bad image, and it sends a very bad monitoring policy to our country, and especially when the government has spent so much money building our roads and the rails along the roads. You wake up in the morning and you find they are not there. They are all gone. And if a car slides just near a river, then the car goes all the way to the river and those people just perish. So therefore, we need these regulations and the rules to be followed to the letter. And therefore, this committee needs to come up with the good rules that will be followed by this industry. The other thing is that people should not be greedy to the expense of destroying their country and the infrastructure that is already put by the government. And the government is spending millions and billions of shillings. And then somebody just comes and picks the metals and sells them for a peanut for a one-day's meal. So that should be discouraged, and also punishment should be severe so that people can fear. And also because now they are losing business. They have lost revenue. They have lost income. That should be a learning point, that they should be having some decorum in the business of the scrap metal. And therefore, we don't want to punish them up to the end. But if the regulations are followed, then the business is a good business, and also people will be earning their living in a nice way, and they will not be able to destroy anything that the government is also putting up. So with those few remarks, I support the committee, and I pray that it shall continue doing their work.
The Honorable Kamkit, reply now.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to reply. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank the honorable members who have supported the committee report, all those who have spoken without mentioning each one by name. And Mr. Speaker, just to say that it is not right, Mr. Speaker, number one, to be over enthusiastic in responding to a problem. There are genuine scrap metal dealers, and there are vandals. Vandalism, of course, cannot be tolerated. But there are genuine scrap metal dealers, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, by the regulatory making authority coming up with those rules out of time and not involving the genuine scrap metal dealers in public participation, the ministry made a mistake. And therefore, this is like earlier articulated by my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, it's important that in anything that the ministries do, that they always involve the people. And Mr. Speaker, you know, somebody once said, you cannot respond to a mosquito bite with a hammer. That is a typical of what happened in these regulations. Mr. Speaker, if I may give an example of what the Minister for Interior made yesterday in my constituency. Minister for Interior went to my constituency and instead of responding to a few cattle thieves who are known, whose names have been given to police, the minister goes and says he's making issuing a curfew orders on the entire constituency. You wonder whether the minister has really taken this into consideration, knowing that we are in the period of campaigns. So, Mr. Speaker, some of these curfew orders that the minister makes must be regulated. And one of the reasons why this committee was created is to look into the excesses of the executive. So, anyway, Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to reply.
Well, honorable members, I'll direct that the next actions will be undertaken in regard to that business when it will be set down next on the order paper. I direct that we move on to the next business on the order paper.
Order number 15, motion, report of the Lake Turkana Wind Power Project.
The Honorable Nasir, I believe you are the chair of this one. You may move your report.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move this report with the hope that we can be able to finalize it by today morning. Mr. Speaker, this is a very intriguing report that this committee did. In fact, it is going to be my last special audit report that I'm moving. Mr. Speaker, one, the Lake Turkana Wind Power Project was a very, very beautiful and a very feasible project that it is actually one of the largest public-private partnership that this country has had. Initially, when this was conceptualized, the company that was meant to do this was meant to do the line together with the power stations. Then up came along that instead of us doing that, let us do the line separately with the birth of Ketraco. Now, as per usual, all over the world, renewable energy has it that if that company has already finished their part and you're not ready to collect that power, then you have to pay what is deemed generated energy.
Honorable Nasir, just move fast, eh?
Yes.
It's, you need to look at the order paper, the way it is, so that you move. You need to say that this House adopts the way it is there. Then you can say the justification.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I beg that this House adopts this particular, I move that this report be adopted. Thank you. Chair, I beg that this House adopts the report of the Public Investment Committee on its consideration of the special audit report on the Lake Turkana Wind Project, laid on the table of this House on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. And as I was continuing, Mr. Speaker, as I was continuing, what ended up happening is that Ketraco did not do a risk assessment to realize that whether, in the event that they delay, what is going to happen. And in the process of that, they signed addendas. Those addendas was for the purposes of the transmission line. And when they signed those addendas, they did not put in mind that that is going to have a replica effect financially on a company that is now charging us for power that was generated but was never ended up being used by Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, equally, amongst the recommendations that we have now said is that the accounting officers then at the Ministry of Energy and Ketraco should be held accountable for one, not conducting an independent legal risk assessment prior to execution of the contracts. And then secondly, Mr. Speaker, there was excess amount of money that had been paid to this company. And in the process of doing that, the amount of money that was paid was 6,173,296 euros. Now, Lake Turkana wrote back to the Ministry of Energy and Kenya Power telling them, you've overpaid us. But it took a whole year for them just to give them an account number as to where they're going to return that money. One whole year, just to give them the right account details. And we are saying that these people who were procrastinating need to be held accountable for more than 30 months. Then secondly, Mr. Speaker, they went and did these transmission interconnected. There were failures in all this, way leaves and signing addendas. Those people who did that, without even explaining that there was going to be a replica effect. Mr. Speaker, just to quickly wind it up, is that we are saying that all these power purchase agreements, they should not be passing through the Attorney General's office after being signed for consent. They should actually be going to the Attorney General before being signed, so that he says that he has his input. You see, right now, the Attorney General's input is more ceremonial. This is actually from the AG themselves. It is more ceremonial. So we now want this to be reversed. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the company, they gave another company to finish this line. What is unfortunate, this company called Nari Group Corporation and Power China Guangzhou actually did an excellent job. They finished this work before the time limit. They finished it before the time limit. And until today, the company that finished the work, that saved us that deemed generated, and they finished it in time. They not only finished it, they signed a clause saying that if we don't finish this in time, we are the ones who will take responsibility for that deemed generated. And until today, that company has not been paid. And until today, they've not even finished the amount of money. So what we are saying is part of the funds that were overpaid to Lake Turkana, that Lake Turkana has now, courtesy of this committee, I want to congratulate my colleagues and the Office of the Auditor General. Part of the things that we have been able to do is we triggered that this money was now returned back. We are saying that this money should be paid to that Chinese company so that to avoid an extra amount of interest. And not only that, it is only right they finish their work on time. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that the National Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands should look into this matter to finalize if there were any matters of land that had to be done. The ESCC has already been directed on who is meant to be held responsible. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and I hope very briefly my brother, Honorable Hire, who was a member of this committee, will be able to second me so that we can be able to finalize on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stand, Mr. Speaker, basically, the Lake Turkana wind power had two components, the power plant and the transmission line. Where we had issues was the delay in the construction of the transmission line, and the problem was it was awarded to a company that didn't have the capacity. It delayed, this company called Isolax delayed, and eventually it even filed for insolvency, and then we got another company. So basically, what happened was this energy, this power from the power plant at Lake Turkana was idle. So the company that constructed the power plant ended up now charging us, deemed generated energy, which essentially was to be evacuated from the power plant to the distribution places. So, Mr. Speaker, this report has quite a good number of recommendations, and we expect that these recommendations be implemented so that in future we don't get these kind of issues. And as I sit down, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate my chairman, the chairman of the Public Investment Committee. He has shown us great leadership for the past 5 years. And I honestly believe, and I honestly think that he deserves to be the governor of the great county of Mombasa. I want to request the great people of Mombasa County to give the chance to Abdul Sharif. He has been a great leader. He has shown some good leadership, and actually he has shown. If you look at the PIC reports, through our recommendations and through his leadership, Mr. Speaker, we have saved these countries billions of shillings. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, allow me then to propose that this House adopts the report of the Public Investments Committee on its consideration of the special audit report on Lake Turkana Wind Power Project laid on the table of the House on Thursday, June the 2nd, 2022. Yes, indeed, I agree with you, the Honorable Hire, that the Honorable Abdul Swamad is an astute, has been an astute member of this House, and we wish him all the best in his pursuit of his dreams. His dreams are legit and they are valid, and we hope that God will give them the wings for him to fly. The first contribution will be by the Honorable Ogutu Abel, member for Bumachoge.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to congratulate the PIC Committee for a very clear report that has been presented ably by the chair, who is the potential candidate for governorship Mombasa County. Honorable Speaker, before I proceed, I want to thank the chair of PIC Committee. I've listened to his report since yesterday. I did rise for an amendment and to withdraw it after looking at the weight of the recommendations that were coming from the committee. I wish to thank him and also say that his reporting has been quite substantive, and I believe that the spirit that he has demonstrated in this floor will be eventually drive his agenda should he become the next governor of Mombasa. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I want to say that this country, Kenya, has one problem. We're talking about unemployment in this country, but to me, the greatest problem in this country is workmanship. That our young people who are driving various sectors in this country are not really out to do the best that they can do, but they are out to use their positions as outlets to scaffold and stifle the development of this country. Wind energy is one alternative energy that is very potential to take this country forward. But listening to the report, Honorable Speaker, I get so disturbed that the technical people in the ministries are not giving us the best of what we expect from them. I want to use this forum and say that this country is going to continue suffering, not because of lack of unemployment, but because of lack of workers who are committed to deliver what we expect of them. It is a disease that is cutting across all sectors, beginning even from the house, at the household level, to the drivers, the maids, and everybody. You recruit somebody, and the moment he joins the job, he starts to extract from the same job. Honorable Speaker, I want to congratulate the committee and support this report. Thank you very much.
Honorable Undo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me take also this opportunity to sincerely thank the committee and the able chairman, the outgoing MP for Mvita, and the incoming governor of County 001, Mombasa Raha. I hope when you get there, you will continue with the Mombasa Raha philosophy, so that when you come to Mombasa, it is all Raha relieve the stress in our constituencies. Mombasa has always, I have fond memories of Mombasa. The warm weather, the humidity makes the body relax. And I hope you will continue the same mantra. Clean up the garbage as you drive from CBD all the way to Nyali. I wish you the best, and I am sure you are equal to the task, no doubt about it. ODM only attracts the best, and the best are always found in ODM. The rest go to other places where they accept mediocrity. But in ODM, we only deal in meritocracy and people who perform. And that's why many of the places ODM has always had the best brain power. Honorable Speaker, coming to the subject matter at hand, Turkana wind power projects. If you recall, Honorable Speaker, some years back, it became eminent that Kenya had a shortage or had a serious shortfall of electricity or power to run the various domestic and commercial activities. Honorable Speaker, and all the years, we have continuously complained of high electricity costs in this country, and therefore all efforts have been done in the past 20 or 30 years to reduce the cost of power and look at green power, friendly and less environmental damaging to the environment. So therefore, the mooting of the Turkana wind power project was a good idea. But as has always been a typical case in this country, a good idea, there will always be devious people who always look for ways and means of making illegal income or legal funds. Honorable Speaker, as we stand here today, it's amazing that it took 30 months for the money to be refunded, and I do believe the interest earned needs to have been explored to find out where that interest went to and who earned, who pocketed that interest, and indeed what was the intention of overpaying for the amount of money. Honorable Speaker, it's typical that before you enter a contract of this nature, there are some basic background checks you need to do. You need to take risk assessment and risk evaluation so that you put into place mitigation measures. It is inconceivable that a body like Ketraco could have failed to do this unless it was, of course, driven by some ill motive. And that has always been the case. I just hope the next Parliament, the Committee of Implementation, together with the SEC, will follow up the recommendation of the committee and deal decisively with this matter. And as I keep on saying, and I like the way Baba has put it very clearly, the greatest disease in this country is not lack of resources, is not lack of economic models, is not lack of propaganda or the rest, is the fight against corruption. If indeed we can fight corruption, if indeed we can fight that kind of mentality that I, as somebody overseeing public resources, must always get my cut, then, Honorable Speaker, we would move this country very, very far. We would not need any sloganeering. We simply need to infuse into our people, those who hold executive positions, that when you hold that executive position, it's a position of trust, and you hold trust in the people of Kenya, you must give them value for money. For whatever shilling that we spend, the multiply effect must be unit and not negative. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, also we take this opportunity to wish you well, because Luanda, that's where my happiness comes from. My wife comes from around that area, and I wish you success. And whenever I drive through, I see how Luanda is coming up, and I just wish that you stay there for another 5 years so that you can turn so that I can always be stopping there and take a cup of tea with my in-laws, and of course the usual staff, if the head can allow. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and wish you the best. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
Oh, what a day. Thank you. The Honorable Aruguru Wanjeku, member for Laikipia.
Thank you, Speaker. Allow me also to take this opportunity to put my voice to the committee led by the Honorable Abdul Salmad, the member from Vita, and also weigh in into this conversation around the Lake Turkana wind power energy. We all know that we are wasting resources and money every single day in the county of Turkana. and you weigh into this conversation from an ordinary Kenyan eye, it's true the cost of power, the cost of energy has really gone up. And this just looks like a mockery to the ordinary citizen. Anytime they hear about the Gamia wells, the county of Turkana was supposed to be, selling crude oil to international community, the clean energy and the wind power, which till now, as we lay this report and as it is adopted by this House, it still remains a conversation that is ending to nowhere. The EACC was called upon by this committee to shed more light in regards to the involvement of the Kenya Power and Lightning Company, the former MD, and even the board of directors, and even the community in itself, the private sector, and the private partners who are engaged in this project. And as it is, the loser is the taxpayer, because the taxpayer will continue funding this project as much as it is idle. But nevertheless, the people who participated or who partnered with the country, I'm talking about the private partners, they will still get their money, whether the project is ongoing or is not. I think I want to agree with the rest of the members of parliament that is a question of us engaging and involving and committing public money into projects that have no certainty end, and projects that have not been conducted enough feasibility study or risk assessment. And this is a question that is before us. It's my sincere desire that whoever becomes the president moving forward, and I really hope Dr. William Ruto becomes the next president, will be in a position, to bring this matter, including many other stalled projects across our counties, to an end. The county of Turkana has been fighting since the beginning of this earth, and the reason why we have been having issues around insecurity is because of resources. If the Ngamia wells and the Turkana oil was up, and the clean energy and the wind power was running, it is certain that money will be circulating in the county of Turkana. And I weigh in this in many of our counties that have government projects, mega projects that should be taking place. Talk about the Galana Kulalu, talk about the dams which are supposed to be continuing, and most of them, they are stalled. Talk about the many roads that Chinese government has taken up. We have committed money, but they have abandoned sites and left because they were disgruntled or there were questions of funding. And talk about many other counties which have failed to benefit, from money which was committed because we could not agree on issues that are to do with the management or analysis from independent bodies. So, Speaker, I want to support and wish my good brother, again, the MP from Vita, the very best in Mombasa. He's been my friend. I don't know what you're going to do about the Kalonzo factor around the wiper now that all of you are in Azimio. We wish you the best as you continue playing your friendly fires inside Azimio. For us, we have a candidate in UDA. I wish him the best, but I wish you better best. Thank you, Speaker, and greater thanks to the people of Laikipia for giving me a chance to serve them as the second woman MP. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable Aroguru. The Honorable Waweru Kiaria, member for Dagoretti South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this. And I want to join my fellow colleagues in congratulating this committee. This committee has actually proven in the last 5 years that there is work that gets done in this parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to single out the chairman and just see what he has done in the last few days, especially the last 2 weeks, in presentation of his reports from his committee, a committee that I would say has been overworking. Mr. Speaker, they say that the road to hell is normally paved with good intentions. Green energy is a great intention for this country. Green energy is actually the future that we would want to walk into. But it is in such mega projects that the evil schemers want to reap what they have never sowed. Mr. Speaker, this report is actually showing us the anatomy of the making of a white elephant project, Mr. Speaker. This is how normally they are made. You dream big, you invest big initially, but never see through with the project, Mr. Speaker. And this is exactly what this report is telling us. Mr. Speaker, this is even speaking to the discussion that we shall be having as a country towards August 9th, Mr. Speaker, where we shall be deciding as a country on who we shall elect, whether we shall be going with a side that believes in mega capital investments, or whether we are going to support a side that believes that this is a country that can be built bottom up by investing in labor-based development. development that gives work to the people, development that lets people build their own country, development that puts money in people's pocket by investing in the talents of Kenyans. That if an investor needs capital, we invest little capital in that investor. If we know a farmer is able to put up something, we subsidize their input, and we also invest an investment in their farming, Mr. Speaker. Because the capital-based projects we have seen in the last 9 years, what they have ended up becoming, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I do want to support this report. I do want to pray that in the Kenya that we shall be building post-August 9, we shall see as a country that we can start with the basics. We can feed our country first, Mr. Speaker. No country ever developed before they fed their people. Then after feeding our people, we can go to the basic. Make sure that everyone out of their talent is meaningfully engaged. But Mr. Speaker, I'd like to conclude by saying that these are the dying minutes of this 12th Parliament. And I do wish each and every member an awesome campaign as they make their bid, either for a return here or even for other offices. And for you, Mr. Speaker, I have been following. I have seen what is happening in Luanda. And I do pray that your goodwill that you have invested in your people shall be repaid with a re-election in this coming election. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to single out the chairman of the committee that has laid this report. The Honorable Abdul Swamad has been exceptional in the 13th Parliament. I do believe that in the coming election, the people of Mombasa will look back and see the amazing work that he has done, because they say that if you can be trusted with the small things, you can be trusted with the bigger things. So, Mr. Speaker, in Mombasa County, I do pray for our gubernatorial candidate in the UDA and Kenya Kwanza ticket, but I want to tell him that he has a great challenge in the person of the Honorable Abdul Swamad, a fitting competitor who, given the chance, would also take Mombasa to very high heights. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kiere, I hope the things that we have done in Dagoretti North, and especially the feeding program that you initiated, and you have actually been a trailblazer in that respect. We'll come back to the things that you have done for the people, the goodwill that you have shown in Dagoretti will shine through. And you are the kind of person that I like to associate myself with. I hope that your path will be lit, and you will find your way back here and to the leadership of this country. Dagoretti South, I wish you the very best, my brother. The Honorable Okelo Odoyo, member for Nyando.
Honorable Speaker, I join my colleagues in thanking the committee for PIC for coming up with such a report which is startling in nature with various revelations quite unknown to Kenyans. But again, on the same breath, let me thank the committee chair, the indomitable, outgoing MP from Vita, who is now poised, barring any providential intervention, to be the next governor of Mombasa County. And we are all in agreement that with his position as the governor for Mombasa, Mombasa is poised for real transformation. Honorable Speaker, delving on the agenda that is before us, it is quite puzzling how the Ministry of Energy did operate, particularly within this project, Honorable Speaker. And no wonder we needed a serious cleanup of this.
The Honorable Okello, just hold on. The Honorable Mishi Mboko, member for Likoni, what is out of order?
Honorable Speaker, there's nothing out of order, but I'm looking to the time and I'm understanding Order 95, and because of the mood of the House that I see everybody supporting this report, I was requesting if the mover could reply so that the House can adopt this report. I'm looking to the time.
Is that the mood of the House? That the mover be called upon to reply? Yes. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it, but the Honorable Doyle, you can wind up so that the mover can reply.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was making reference to the startling revelation by the committee, how monies were being siphoned using government agencies with certain companies actually registered abroad, but the real members or real owners of those companies are actually Kenyans here, Honorable Speaker. But it startles everybody, Honorable Speaker, how a project of this magnitude to generate power using windmill in Turkana could have taken shape without the involvement of the Attorney General's decision or assessment, Honorable Speaker. I think this should be notice to all these sagas and MDAs, Honorable Speaker, that will be doing business. And I want to give a warning shot to them early in good time, now that Honorable Raila Odinga is going to be the next president, Honorable Speaker, that these kinds of activities will never, ever be tolerated. What must be done will have to be done. And if the participatory role of the Attorney General is key, that must be put into place, and their decision or their advice must be sought, Honorable Speaker. 6 million euros, an equivalent of about 500 million shillings, taken out of the country. But again, it tells you how our morals are so different from people out there, because it is the company out there, from what the committee is saying, that wrote to the Kenyan authorities advising them that you have overpaid us. They were overpaid for reasons that this company could not understand. But again, it takes 30 months to just provide a banking information where that money, the excess, could be channeled back to. So that tells you that there was more than meets the eye in this kind of project, Honorable Speaker. These are the things that we must confine to our history books so that together we can come up with a new country, Honorable Speaker. Finally, because you told me to wrap up, let me thank the people of Nyando most sincerely for giving me the mandate to serve them 2017 to 2022. And I'm sure that they are giving me a second mandate to come back to champion their ideals 2022 to 2027, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank and wish everybody in this House great success, those who are moving to the next ladder, such as my friend Honorable Abu Somad. I wish you well. Honorable Speaker, I know you very well, Uncle, and I have visited Luanda constituency. And if word goes around that you are around Luanda, the whole center comes to a standstill because of their love for you, Honorable Speaker. 3 months ago, I visited your constituency with the Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and we landed at a school where you picked us up and took us to the venue where you had prepared an event. Honorable Speaker, I was humbled that you firstly prayed for us. You know, politicians and prayers are usually invariables. But you prayed for us, and it came from your heart as I listened pensively to those prayers. And those same prayers that you prayed for the Prime Minister, to yourself, to me, and those who are in attendance, are the ones that have pushed us to where we are today. You're aware that the numbers have started changing, and the Prime Minister is now way ahead of the pack, courtesy of those same prayers that you offered, Honorable Speaker. And we know that we will continue beseeching our Father in heaven to provide to us all that we need so that we can serve our people better. And I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity.
You are still in my prayers, the Honorable Member for Nyando, that the people of Nyando will hear your prayer and your cry, and that the work you have done for them will speak for you. And I am confident that you will find your way back here. Just as the River Nyando really flows into Lake Victoria, you will surely flow back into this house. I pray for you. Before I call upon the Honorable Abdul Samad to reply, I wish to recognize the presence in the visitors gallery, the following, the public gallery, the following students from Kimbo Githurai Primary School, Ruiru constituency, Kiambu County, who have come to observe the proceedings of the House. I wish them God's blessings, and I wish them success in their studies, and I wish them life and a better tomorrow in this country, and that some of them will find their way surely on this floor to debate the issues and of Kenyans in the future, surely, as we are doing today. The Honorable Abdul Samad. The Honorable Abdul Samad, I am sure this report and the things that I've listened to here in regard to this special report, I'm sure they are just the tip of the iceberg in regard to this Turkana wind power project and the whole Loyangalani line debacle. I think, from what I've heard, it surprises me that a country such as ours and the kind of poverty that strangles us, that we have produced power in enormity, that we did not have the plan to use, and it just went to waste in the billions of shillings. It is a tragedy, surely. It is terrible. And the people who have done this, surely, they must someday in this country we must find a way to punish these people. I want them to know that as long as we are here and we know that this happened, the perpetrators of this haste upon Kenyans must find their day, surely, in the court of justice before the people of Kenya. It is terrible what has happened with this project, and we will definitely not forget what has happened as long as we are breathing and Kenyans are still there. The perpetrators must be brought to justice to book. Proceed, the Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first and foremost thank every single one of you here. It has been a truly beautiful journey. Most important, it has been a journey of learning. And as I beg to reply, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank every one of you, the accolades that you have showered me with. This was not a one-man army. I would not have been able to do this if it was not for the support of my colleague members, the members of staff who are attached to my committee, and definitely the Secretariat and the Clerk's Office, and the Speaker for having supported us. It has been a very, very exciting journey. We were able to work even during the COVID period, remotely or otherwise, and in some instances where we had to, we did what needed to be done. We've set records, and I'm hoping that I have made the people of Mvita and Mombasa at large proud for being their representative, and I wish the next lot who are going to come after us the best of luck, and they take the mantle even higher. With those many remarks, once again, I'm truly honored and humbled, and I beg to reply. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Abdul Samad. Honorable members, I think we have come to the end of today's session, but I just want to again wish all the members the very best in their endeavors as they see.
On the constitutionality of any business before the House may be raised at any stage during the consideration of the affected business. The honourable members were therefore perfectly in order to raise the matters covered under their points of orders. Honourable members, allow me now to examine the 4 issues that require my guidance this afternoon. Firstly, on the issue of whether the provisions of the Universities Amendment Bill 2021 violate Articles 10, 43, Clause 1, Paragraph F, and 201 of the Constitution, I will note that from my perusal of the bill, it does not seem to fully address the issue of the need for audit of the utilization of public funds directed towards private universities. Indeed, honourable members, no provision in the bill addresses how funds proposed to be directed to the tuition of students placed in private universities are to be audited to ensure that the expenditure of the funds is legally and prudently spent in accordance with the requirements of Article 201, Paragraph D, and Article 229, Clause 5 of the Constitution. Let me resume my seat to allow those members to also make their way in. The member for Muradikil, don't run, don't run. You are an honorable member. You should just stroll into the place as you normally do majestically. Now, indeed, Clause 18 of the bill, which seeks to repeal Section 54 of the Universities Act of 2012, has established the Universities Fund Board without providing the standard provisions on auditing and reporting normally found in legislation which have established funds. I note that Articles 226 and 229 of the Constitution, as run together with the Public Audit Act of 2015, require the Auditor General to audit any entity that is funded from public funds. The bill ought to have expressly actualized these standard provisions in Clause 18 with specificity. Certainly, to have a bill without audit provisions where public funds are to be advanced to private entities is tantamount to negating the provisions of Article 201, 226, and 229 of the Constitution. Simply put, to establish a bond for a fund without auditing provisions is certainly putting the cart before the horse. Honourable members, what troubles me is the fact that from the outset, this was not a consideration that informed the introduction of the bill in the House. However, whereas I note that the member for Kikuyu constituency and the member for Seme have in their proposed amendments to the bill provided for the requirements for the audit of the public funds directed to private universities, I'm quite uncomfortable to leave the inclusion of a provision seeking to reflect a constitutional principle to the vagaries of a vote of the House, which may go either way or may be withdrawn by the mover. Indeed, the Speaker has no power to order that a proposed amendment by a member be carried in the House to cure a constitutional deficiency. To this end, it is my considered view that any provisions in the bill seeking to address any concerns raised with regard to its constitutionality ought to have been addressed at its publication. Any revision at this particular stage of the bill through amendment fails to properly address the constitutional concerns raised, as the amendments may be defeated by a simple majority of the members of the House present and voting, and lead to an absurd result. So unable to pronounce myself with finality on the constitutionality of the cited provisions at this stage, I am perfectly able to direct that the issues raised are valid and ought to have been addressed by the proponents of the bill before its publication. Honourable members, whereas it is notable that the Auditor General has a constitutional obligation under Articles 226 and 229 of the Constitution to audit any entity funded by public funds, the auditing requirements ought to be included in legislation causing the appropriation of funds to such entities, and the case presented by this bill is not exceptional. I therefore urge the next House to ensure that public funds that may have been expended this year or indeed previously to entities under the Universities Act are held accountable, and the Auditor General has certainly a constitutional obligation to audit and report on the accounts of such entities separately. Honourable members, with respect to the constitutionality of the bill with regard to Article 10 of the Constitution on the national values and principles of governance, in particular, I note that clauses 13 and 14 of the bill propose to give power to the Cabinet Secretary responsible for education to appoint vice chancellors of public universities and to revoke the appointment of the person and any member of the councils of the universities. Clause 13 further gives the Cabinet Secretary power to approve meetings of the councils of public universities where they propose to meet more than 4 times in a year. Now, members, certainly, clauses 13 and 14 of the bill raise questions on whether the clauses as couched in the bill would promote good governance, and it is an issue that the Committee on Education ought to have considered. Lastly, on the constitutionality of the bill in respect to Article 43(1), paragraph F of the Constitution, I will restrain myself from guiding this House on the matter, as I know that it relates to a question of violation of the right to education as an economic and social right contained in the Bill of Rights. As I have guided this House severally, a question on the violation of a right and fundamental freedoms falls within the exclusive jurisdiction of the High Court in terms of Article 165 of the Constitution. I do not intend to depart from my previous rulings on this matter. I resume my seat to allow the others to come in. The member for Karachuonyo, you are in and out. You are confusing people. And not given your height, nobody knows whether to trend on you or to you. Member for Shinyalu, you are walking in. I just assumed my seat to allow you to come in. This member for Nairobi doesn't want to sit. You see the members who are coming late. I may just wish to remind you that those of you, and I believe maybe you may not have known, but I'm sure those of you like the Honorable Jimmy Angwenyi would recall the old days in the villages, this being the last day, when people would close schools. They chose the people with whom to close. So I hope the member for Nairobi is not choosing the Honorable Wangwe to close with. Honourable members, moving on to the second issue, which is with regard to the issue of whether the bill concerns county governments, I do note that despite this issue falling squarely under the province of the 2 speakers of Parliament, in line with the provisions of Article 110(3) of the Constitution, an argument may still be sustained in the event amendments proposed to the bill affect its nature. A perusal of the bill reveals that Clause 9 of the bill as published seeks to repeal and replace Section 26 of the Universities Act to require the Commission on University Education to ensure accessibility of public universities by all counties. Additionally, the amendments proposed to the bill by various members, including those proposing partnerships between universities and counties, and the Committee of Public Land held in trust for the public by counties, may result in a designation of the bill as a bill concerning county governments in terms of Article 110, Clause 1 of the Constitution, as read together with Part 2 of the 4th Schedule to the Constitution, if passed by this House. And this now settles the second issue. Honourable members, on the third issue, I will not belabor myself on the question of the adequacy of public participation on the bill. I've ruled on numerous occasions in this Parliament on the need for the procedures of the House to incorporate meaningful public participation as directed severally by the courts. I've also on numerous occasions emphasized on the need for this House and its committees to ensure that public participation is not a cosmetic process, but one of probative value. In this regard, I note that the report of the Departmental Committee on Education on the bill seem not to meet the threshold set by this House on meaningful involvement of the public. At face value, I'm at pains to discern from the two reports tabled by the committee any meaningful engagement with the key stakeholders affected by the bill. In the reports, there are no indication as to whether the committee, at the very least, invited the vice chancellors of all the 52 chartered universities, including 32 of which are public, and the 12 universities with letters of interim authority to make representations on the bill. There is no mention of whether the committee invited and considered the crucial input of stakeholders such as the Commission on University Education and the existing Universities Fund Board, and whether it considered their views. If it did, there is no record of it in their report to the House and addendum to the report. To my mind, a meaningful public participation exercise should mirror the current practice adopted by the Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning, which invites its principal stakeholders to make submissions on any business appearing before them, even if they do not send any memoranda. This allows them a broad perspective over the issues under their consideration, whether or not such stakeholders opt to submit memoranda in response to a call for public participation. The paucity of the committee report becomes more glaring when one takes into account the allegations made on the floor of the House that the response to the committee's invitation for public participation drew rather partisan submissions, including submissions from a forum sent to represent the vice chancellors of universities instead of the actual vice chancellors themselves. I'm of the opinion that the exercise conducted by the committee would have been sufficient if it involved its key stakeholders and persons directly affected by the bill by default. Honourable members, finally, on the fourth and last issue, which is whether the harmonization of amendments proposed to the bill was properly executed, I do note that Standing Order 131 is a device that assists committees to harmonize amendments, in effect assisting the House and members to avoid unnecessary objections during the committee or the whole House stage. I, however, note that a number of members who joined issue with the Honourable Ichongwa noted that they proposed amendments to the bill, but their efforts to have their issues addressed during the harmonization process envisaged in the Standing Order 131 was less than fruitful. From the foregoing, this indicates that the harmonization or the winnowing process under Standing Order 131 by the Committee on Education and Research did not meet the dictates of the same standing order. Honourable members, whereas I note that lack of the harmonization process does not in any way impede a member from proceeding with the amendments in the House, and indeed, as ably noted by the Honourable Dr. Wilberforce Ojiambo Udo, the amendments proposed by the members were included in the order paper for the afternoon sitting of the House yesterday, and also included in the order paper for this particular sitting. A committee directed to conduct the harmonization process under Standing Order 131 must demonstrate compliance with the standing order. It, however, appears from the submissions made by the members in yesterday's afternoon sitting and the plethora of amendments contained in the order paper that the winnowing process failed to meet the bare minimum of the expectations of Standing Order 131. In light of the foregoing, what then is the prudent action to be taken at this stage of the bill in view of the concerns raised? I do note, honourable members, from the outset that in addition to the concerns raised by the various honourable members, the bill has attracted numerous amendments, as may be seen from the order paper. This, in my view, is a pointer to the need for a rethink of the bill by its proponents. Insisting on the prosecution of the bill in its current form, despite the objections, questions of constitutionality, concerns on the quality of public participation undertaken on the bill, and the numerous proposals for amendments, may only easily expose any resultant act passed by this House to easy challenges in courts of law. Conscious of the fact that the House is scheduled to adjourn sine die today, in view of the forthcoming general elections, I do note that if the committee had taken time to address some of these issues when they were first raised during second reading, we would be facing a different situation today. Honourable members, it is also notable that the issues raised by the honourable members touch on three main issues, main clauses, being clauses 13 and 14 on the powers of the Cabinet Secretary in respect to the public universities, and clause 18 of the bill with regard to the university's FAD board. These clauses form the cracks of the flesh and pith, and the pith and substance of the bill. Indeed, one may want to argue that the easy way to cure questions of constitutionality is to sphere or expurge the unconstitutional clauses in a bill. However, honourable members, should I order expurging of the three clauses from the bill, this will also require me to also order expurging other clauses and consequential amendments to the spherance of the three clauses. From a perusal of the bill, if you are to expurge clause 18 of the bill, you may also need to expurge clauses 16, 17, 19, and 20, among other related clauses. This will leave a shell of a bill with no clause to deliberate on. Suffice to say, the spherance of clause 18 of the bill would also be an abdication of the watchdog and oversight role of this House of ensuring accountability on the utilization of public funds. In light of the foregoing, I am therefore of the considered opinion that it is prudent and advisable for the bill to be republished in order to align it with the Constitution and take into account the concerns raised by members on the issues of constitutionality, public audit, public participation, and the nature and extent of the discrimination in the policy that seeks to commit a student eligible to attend a cheaper public university to a private university with a higher fee requirement. Honourable members, as your Speaker, I have previously ruled that I cannot close my eyes even when faced with competing unpleasant scenarios. In the present case, the question as to whether I should let the House to commit a constitutional requirement to a vote or stand down a bill that has attracted serious questions by members of the House, I would prefer standing the bill down to allow its regularization. Any other decision would, in my view, be reckless and would establish a defective precedent. In light of the foregoing, the bill cannot, in its present state and form, proceed for consideration in the Committee of the whole House. Honourable members, I thank you for raising the matter and for all your contributions on the ensuing debate of valuable insights that undoubtedly shall enrich future interrogation of bills before the House. In summary, this is my finding. 1, that in the interim and pending further interrogation of the constitutionality of the Universities Amendment Bill 2021, the bill fails to fully actualize the provisions of Articles 201 and 229, Clause 5 of the Constitution on the need for reporting and audit of the utilization of public funds allocated to private universities. 2, that the Departmental Committee on Education and Research failed to propose any remedy for action by the House to actualize these two provisions. The only proposal close to actualizing one of these provisions is by the member for Seme constituency and the member for Kikuyu constituency. However, at this stage, leaving the inclusion of a provision seeking to reflect a constitutional principle to the vagaries of a vote of the House would be imprudent. 3, that to the extent that the bill makes provisions touching on county governments and that various amendments, if passed, would require an interaction between universities and the functions reserved for county governments, the bill is likely to concern county governments within the meaning of Article 110, Clause 1 of the Constitution. 4, that the public participation exercise conducted by the Departmental Committee on Education and Research was not sufficient as it did not involve its primary stakeholders and persons directly affected by the proposed legislation by default. The committee ought to have invited, heard, and considered the views of the vice chancellors of at least a reasonable fraction of all the 52 public and private chartered universities, the 12 institutions with letters of interim authority, the Commission on University Education, and the Universities Fund Board at the very least. 5, that based on the submissions by the members in the House and the plethora of amendments contained in the order paper for yesterday and today's afternoon, the harmonization of the amendments proposed to the bill by the committee did not meet the dictates of Standing Order 131. 6, and last, that the Universities Amendment Bill 2021 be and is hereby ordered to be republished in order to take into account the concerns raised by the members and align it with the expectations of Articles 10, 43, Clause 1, Paragraph F, 201, and 229, Clause 5 of the Constitution. The House is accordingly guided, and I thank you, honourable members. Honourable members, honourable member for Nairobi, you just walked in. Just listen to this. At least when you come back in the 13th Parliament, you remember this. Honourable members.